All right, so part three. So what I was saying was we're in like the 1950s to the 1980s now, and the second wave feminism goes into the 1980s, and you got the 9 to 5 Dolly Parton thing going on, and whatever. But most of the jobs out there in the 1980s are still hands-on factory work, industrial work, stuff like that stuff that's really male dominated. For like, if you were to look at the economy of most Western countries, most of the stuff was production based and not as much consumer based. So, like for example, if you bought a fridge and something happened to your fridge, you could call a refrigerator repairman. Good luck trying that now. Although there are guys that do it as a niche, but like there was an actual, like there were thousands and thousands of people across the country that did this. They fixed your stove, they fixed your, they were called service repairmen. Sears had them, the Bay had them, the Hudson Bay, same thing. All these stores, like Canadian Tire had them. Like there was just a service guy going out with a van and fixing washers and dryers and stuff like that. And, maybe a couple of kids got born that way too, I'm sure. But all kidding aside, that was the thing, but it was very male dominated. There was one guy, I remember, he was an older guy, and I used to talk to him all the time, and that was the only job he ever had, and he retired as a service repairman for years and years. Freaking flying. Why did the guy land on the damn screen? It's not like the resolution of my cameras aren't bad enough as it is, right? So anyway, the women don't do these kind of jobs. The pipeline workers, they don't typically do that. There was always the exception to the rule, right? I mean, you had your Amelia Earharts, whatever, but most airline pilots, even still today, are men. Except for now, they're not hiring men. That's the problem. Because there's quotas now, right? So women had to find jobs for women to do. And in the 1980s, you start to really, well, you could even say in the 1970s, but really the 1980s, it starts taking hold, where you really start seeing academia and the HR departments start to explode, right? And every corporation, every government office had to have these giant HR departments. And in the 90s, they started getting even bigger. And in the early 2000s, 90% of your workforce is HR department, you know what I mean? But also in the 90s, we had that recession. Because when I was a young man, that's when I started working, was in the 90s, and I started right in a recession. Now, that was hard enough back then. I've had over 100 jobs in my lifetime, okay, and I've never been fired once. And I've been laid off so many times in the 90s. Like, I'd get like 6 weeks worth of work, 12 weeks worth of work, and then, sorry guys, we got to let you go. I don't know how many. I remember one time I went, and I've told this story before, just to give you an idea. I applied for a job. They're like, yeah, come down 8:30 tomorrow morning. Be happy to meet you, whatever. I get down there, and there's fucking chains on the door. I'm like, and it's like out of business. And I didn't. There was me and another guy showing up at the same time, and I'm like, what do we do? So I went to the payphone. Yeah, when there was payphones. And I tried to call, nobody picked up the phone, whatever. So I waited till like 11:30, and I was like, okay, nobody's coming, And I tried to call for like a week after, and it was just like there was nobody. I was like, okay, I just, because I was confused. Like, okay, but you said come down 8:30 tomorrow morning, and I was there like a half an hour early, and it's like you weren't there. Cruel joke, right? But yeah. So in the 90s, our economies got restructured to go from a manufacturing to service sector. So we've seen the things like the rise of NAFTA in the 80s and all that stuff. And then, of course, now we know where it leads to with the globalism. The beginnings of globalism really start in the 1990s after the fall of the Soviet Union. You start to really see... and I have my theories that, on the Soviet Union, whether it really collapsed or not. Look at the weapons they got now, and I'm like, 30 years, 34 years, 33 years after you collapsed, and you've got like super weapons. Yeah, you didn't collapse. You just diverted the wealth is what you did. And we kind of could sort of see that happening right now for those that are paying attention with the economy. It's just that wealth is being diverted to a handful of centralized banks, right? I won't use any names. You could kind of figure out who owns everything. It's like three companies. They own everything. But anyway, yeah, so they took, like in the 1990s, okay, where, yeah, women were working in restaurants, women were working in office buildings and stuff like that. That wasn't new, whatever, but the economy was still kind of, there was men jobs and there was women jobs, right? And most of the guys I worked with either worked construction, it was almost 99.9% male, probably still is. Heavy equipment, you never saw a woman on a bulldozer. Like, it just didn't happen. Truck drivers, the odd one out of every 100,000 you'd see a female truck driver. Now there's a lot more. Dump trucks. Women seem to like the dump trucks more. I guess because, well, dump trucks are closer to home and whatever, you come home at night. I'd like to have a dump truck just to drive around for the sake of it. But me, I just want to, like, a 389 Peterbilt reg cab just to drive around, bobtail all over the place. That'd be fun. Don't have a license for it, but just, if I was wealthy, I wouldn't drive a supercar. I'd drive a Peterbilt or the 789. You're like all tricked out. But anyway, all right, sorry, the 379. Sorry, the one that everybody loves. So anyway. I even remember like listening to this on the news and stuff like that, and I know I said, "What does this have to do with female nature?" So we're getting there. Be patient. The thing is, what happened was they had decided in the 90s that they were going to restructure the world economy. So up here in Canada, you had like de Havilland, which has been bought out and stuff like that. You had all these, you had Air Canada, Canada Air, you had all these rail lines, you had sailboat manufacturers. I always talked about the sailboat. You had Mister, you had Tanzer, you had Hughes Boat Works. Yes, the Howard was owned by Howard Hughes, but it was built up here in Canada. We built most of the, Columbia Yachts was more in the States, owned by Howard Hughes, and Hughes Boat Works, which I jacked up my boat there, which is a Hughes boat, Hughes 26, sitting in the backyard there. These were all made here. And then there was a bunch of others, Kirby yachts. Those were fastest yachts out there. The Kirby 25, legend. The 8J24s for breakfast. It's still, in its class, right, it's still one of the fastest Canadian-designed sailboats in the 25-foot range with a regular keel. Like, the thing was fast. It was a 10-knot boat, like 10 and a half, 11-knot boat, like 25 feet long. Like, it's crazy. If you've ever raced one, you know what the back of them looks like. But anyway, all these sailboat manufacturers went out of business. Bombardier downsized, and then they started to send all the manufacturing of Bombardier over to Mexico. Suddenly we were shipping all the jobs, the manufacturing, to China because the labor was cheaper and stuff like that. Then we were shipping this here and this there. Next thing we know, in the 90s, the only thing you could get people to do was tech support, right? So I'll leave it right there and I'll make part 4.